Well, hello again, everybody. This is John Norris at Trading Perspectives. As always, we have our good friend, Sam Clement. Sam, say hello.
Hey, John.
You doing okay today?
Doing awesome. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I can't complain. But you know something? I do have a feeling that people will be complaining about our subject for today's podcast.
I do too.
At least through between now and the election. Do you know what that topic is, Sam?
I do know what that topic is.
The topic is the Electoral College.
Yeah.
And Sam, you might remember back in 2016 and also I believe in 2000, the winner of the Electoral College who ended up being president of the United States did not actually win the popular vote.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, in 2016, as we all well know, President Trump won the Electoral College but lost the popular vote by a couple million votes, really.
I think like 3 million, was it?
So there was some dissatisfaction, let's just call it that, amongst
Light
people,
way to put it.
amongst people affiliated with the Democratic Party who said that this was completely unfair, that popular votes should count, and that Hillary Clinton should have won the presidency because she got more votes than Donald Trump. However, that is not the way that our founding fathers set up the election of presidents.
It's not. And I think what's interesting is when you go back and look at how we started and how our election was built, it wasn't some easy decision that we all came to, that we were going to basically create this new way to elect the leader of our country. It was a lot of kind of back and forth. Some people wanted it to be a straight democracy. Other people wanted the legislator to pick the leader of the country. And so it molded over time. And what we came up with is a new way that's really kind of unprecedented to elect the leader of our country. And it's a way that has kind of stood the test of time, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, back when the nation was founded, or at least the Constitution was being ratified, and the election of the president of primary concern and how to do the process.
Yeah.
The original idea was for the electors to be done at the state level, and for them to be, for lack of a better word, the smartest people not affiliated with government otherwise in the room, that they would have the greatest access to the attributes of the candidates running for president
and for their state,
and so they would be the community leaders outside of politics for all intents and purposes, who would then decide who the president was. And it was the general population, or the general population would vote on the legislature. If I understand, the legislature would then decide the electors, and then the electors would decide the presidency. So even now, with the general population electing the electors, we've deviated a little bit from the original Electoral College. But I would say now what's far more direct than at least how the founding fathers envisioned it. But they envisioned having the Electoral College largely so you didn't have a faction or factions, a cabal or cabals, or a very small vested interests, whether it be geographically located or with a certain type of economic strategy, where a certain small group of people or geographic location could essentially set policy for the entire geographic expanse of the United States.
Exactly. And I think another point we have to bring up, again, going back to how it was founded, is how us as a country were founded. We weren't all of a sudden just one country. We were all these states that were kind of run on their own. They were their own entity, and they came together. And the way our Electoral College was built was around these states with their own rights and their own issues, and a way to kind of come together and without kind of minimizing the impact of some of these smaller states.
Well, and you're absolutely right. And Sam, I know that you have seen the maps, and I'm sure most Americans have seen the maps of the 2016 election, even the 2000 election. And it would appear as though if someone were coming in from outer space, they would go, why is this one side blue? Why is this side blue? And why is everything else in the middle red?
Yeah.
And so if you were to take a look at really just the percentage, not necessarily the people, but the percentage of the geographic location of the United States that voted for Donald Trump, it wasn't even close.
Right.
It was a vast majority of the landmass.
Small counties and, with a few people. And
the lesser populated states and the flyovers as people in Los Angeles and New York would call us.
Sure.
But here we are, a ton of people, actually a lot of people still remaining in the so-called flyovers.
Yeah.
And then if you were to ask us living here, actually the Electoral College still makes us somewhat relevant.
Yeah.
It still makes us somewhat relevant to policymakers. They at least have to listen to what we have to say, if nothing else, every 2 to 4 years. And without it, we probably wouldn't be heard very much at all.
Well, it's kind of the same idea as why we have a Senate, and where every state has 2 representatives, and then where we have the House of Representatives, which is more based on population. It's that kind of checks and balances, which is kind of the foundation of everything that we're built on, is checks and balances. That's why the legislators, like you mentioned, they weren't the ones that just pick who the president was. Because that kind of throws off the whole checks and balances of our system. So, I mean, it makes sense when you go back and look at our country and how we were founded and why we were founded, that we would have a system like this.
Well, it makes perfect sense, because the United States, far unlike a lot of other countries in the world, is far less homogeneous, and there are vast regional differences. This is going to be a very gross simplification. But, I would say the regional differences between areas in the Netherlands or areas of even Germany are far less than the regional differences that we would have here in the United States.
Yeah, there's still differences between them, but as far as, like you said, we're just not nearly as homogenous as some of those other countries are.
I mean, if you think about just the geographic expanse of the United States from Bangor, Maine, or the county up in Maine to Honolulu, from Miami to
Anchorage
or Fairbanks, Alaska, from Birmingham, Alabama to Seattle, Washington, from San Francisco to, Danville, Virginia.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of different regional dialects, and you have a lot of different customs, and you have a lot of different culture, and you have a lot of different cuisine. And
how about Montgomery, Alabama, and Portland, Oregon?
Not a lot in common there. They have more people downtown at night in Portland than they in one night.
Barely, but just for different reasons.
Than Montgomery has an entire year in a lot of ways. But I would say that really does play into kind of the heart of why I think the Electoral College is still necessary, is the fact that we are not homogenous. We do have regional differences. It's not just as simple as people in Los Angeles County or in Cook County, Illinois, or even the 5 boroughs getting to dictate what everyone else does. As much as they would say that's the fair thing to do, I would say it's not the fair thing to do, because, hey, I'm still living here because our government is really what makes us all Americans, and our shared experience in how we adhere to our government. And if we don't have any say-so in government, truthfully, then why would we even bother?
And so many of these states that we think of as far-right states or far-left states, they're not as far left when you look at it as a whole. I mean, California is the prototypical Democratic state in a lot of people's minds, and Hillary Clinton only got 61% of the vote there, and I guess that's a strong turnout somewhat, but that's still
a couple million people voted for Donald Trump.
That's still almost 40% of this massive state that didn't vote for her, except she still gets 50 all 55 of the electoral votes out of the state. And there's examples like that on both sides of the aisle where a lot of people's votes just kind of aren't heard, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you take a look at some of the states that are traditionally red states, and even in Alabama is about the same, about a 60-40 split or something like that. And people
we're one of the hardest right states probably in the country, and it's still 60-40.
Well, and the thing is, and what a lot of people really kind of understand, there's about 20% of either party is far out to the left. I mean, so we have 40% of the population that is so far out, and then the remaining 60% of us are someplace in between. And so that is the reason why those people who are clamoring for an end of the Electoral College need to be very careful about that. Because, while we've got the 20% on either side that are hardcore, you're going to see that middle 60% fluctuate from time to time. We've seen it time and time again in our nation's history where we've seen these big shifts. And while right now it might be very difficult for us to imagine it as we have become so polarized, if you think about where we were during the Johnson administration and where we went to the Reagan administration, that is the pendulum swinging very far back the other way.
It is very precedented to happen, and although right now, like you said, it may not seem like it can happen, the precedence is that it is going to happen at some point. And so I think people have to keep in mind that while a policy may be good for you right now, you got to think about how quickly the coin can flip, how quickly the same policy that you like right now or you're pushing for to help your side can very easily be used against you as long as the coin flips.
Well, and that's very much a case in point on why the Electoral College is so necessary. I'd even say the filibuster is because it does put a check on the majority in some form or fashion. I'm not going to say it gives an unfair advantage to the minority in the political debate, but it does put a check on the majority.
Exactly.
And so that's the reason why it's so important. And, but however, it seems as though a lot of people really don't understand that. They don't understand kind of what basic civics are. And even if they do understand it, well, they're just kind of talking about their political party at this point in time.
I've heard the examples thrown out from someone who is trying to push for just a straight one-for-one vote, that it's kind of like a baseball game where the winner is determined by who wins the most innings, not who has the most runs, and different innings are worth different amounts. But the problem with that analogy is it's considering everything kind of homogenous. It's not breaking out the fact that we have states with different interests and different values in mind, so it just doesn't really make sense.
Well, the thing about it is, in a baseball game, and you have a definite winner and a definite loser.
Right.
It's a zero-sum outcome. I venture to guess no one really wants a presidential election to be a zero-sum outcome.
Right.
Zero-sum outcome where there is a definitive loser, and those people get their goals and their aspirations crushed for the next 4 years.
Right.
So I don't think anyone envisions that in the United States. So that analogy is absolutely without merit in my estimation because, okay, I'm fine, I get what you're saying, but the loser on the baseballs, they're the loser.
Yeah, they 100% lose.
100% lose. Do we really want that for half of our population?
It's really not what we were kind of founded on.
That's not what we were founded on, and I don't think anyone really feels that way, no matter how heated they might get in a political debate at any one given time. So that's what all these checks and balances are. Mm-hmm. Checks and balances between the legislative branch and the executive branch, between the executive branch and the judicial branch, with the Electoral College, with the Bill of Rights. All of these things that our forefathers and our founding fathers came up with in our Constitution and our form of government is all to suppress the political power of one entity,
right,
and then also one faction of people.
Depends who's on the winning side. Whether that's a great thing.
It all depends. Without a doubt, there have been times that back when President Bush, this second term, and all that stuff. Hey, the Republicans had all three.
Yeah.
And gee whiz, let's get rid of filibuster.
Yeah,
let's gerrymander everything and all that stuff. But
look at it.
Then it's going back the other way.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been all that long. We just happen to have a president that is as polarizing as any that we've had since Nixon, more than likely. And people are scared that we're going to have the same thing happen in November that we saw in 2016. And if that is the case, if that truly is the case, then I would venture to say that the Democrats have not done a very good job spreading their message to the red states, and the Republicans have not done a very good job spreading their message to the blue states if we have the same outcome as we had in 2016.
Yeah, I think it's worth keeping in mind that this has only happened, 5 times in our history where there's been this big of a divide in the popular vote versus the Electoral College. And I think that is the problem, though, is how divisive of a president Trump has been right now and how divided the left is from the right now and how it's become such a big issue. And so I think if we see a repeat of 2016, I think this is going to be kind of one of the biggest topics of the next 4 years is getting rid of something that, it's in the Constitution. It is the Electoral College is the longest part of the Constitution that talks about one specific action.
Yeah. Well, the thing about it is it's going to be a topic of debate if we have another repeat of 2016, and we're going to be talking about getting rid of something that has, by and large, the vast majority of the time, worked.
Yeah.
In my estimation. And I'd say even most people's estimations.
Yeah.
And I would say that, in 2016, if we have a repeat of that, as I mentioned, it's not necessarily a failure of the Electoral College. It's a failure of the political parties to spread their message to a wider geographic area than their core bases.
Yeah.
And so, if the same outcome comes, it's going to be because Joe Biden didn't come down to Alabama as much.
Yeah.
Or Donald Trump didn't do what he needed to do in California to make people like him a little bit.
Well, and you mentioned him coming down, or Biden coming down to Alabama, or Trump going somewhere else, and without the Electoral College, I I don't think anyone would come to Alabama. I don't think anyone would come to a lot of states.
We're nice down here. I think people would come and visit.
No.
Are you meaning presidential candidates?
Yeah, not including the people driving through to go to the beach either.
Yeah, the people on I-65 that breeze right through Birmingham, breeze right through Montgomery, then get to 30A and went,
But you get my point.
Yeah, I get your point completely. Get your point completely. The Electoral College and the way the government is set up, the way the presidential elections are set up, ensures that all American votes have some form of relevancy, no matter where they are cast.
Yeah.
In the election of the U.S. president.
Yeah.
There you have it. I'd say let's not get rid of it.
I agree.
We're not really trading perspectives here.
I don't think we are.
We rarely do. But however, that's because, I don't know, we work together, we talk too much together or something like that. At some point, you start rubbing off on one another. In any event, guys, thank you all so much for listening. We always love to hear from you all. So if you have any questions or comments, please let us know. You can always send us an email to tradingperspectives@oakworthcapital.com, where you can leave us a review on the podcast outlet of your choice. If you're interested in hearing more or reading more of what we have to say, you can check out our blog, Common Sense, along with other good stuff, at oakworthcapital.com underneath the Thought Leadership tab. As always, Sam, I'm going to give you last chance.
That's all I got.
That's all I've got today, too. Y'all take care.